Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lunch Break Science. I'm Ariel Johnson from the Leakey Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting human evolution research and sharing discoveries in programs like this. We'd like to thank the Anne and Gordon Getty Foundation and Camilla and George Smith, whose generous support made this episode of Lunch Break Science possible. Here with us today is Leakey Foundation grantee, Shanti Pappu. Shanti, thank you so much for being here with us.
Hello, and I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I think the Leakey Foundation has been such a wonderful part of our research journey. So it's for not only me, but for our entire team. So it's really special to be part of this program. Thank you.
Well, I'm really thrilled to hear that. So Shanti's joining us from Chennai in India, where she is the founder and lead researcher at the Sharma Center for Heritage Education India. Her research takes her to archaeological sites across India, ranging from 1.5 million years ago to 5,000 years ago. Today, she'll be digging deeper into the archaeology and prehistory of South India. Before we hear from Shanti, if you are watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, Leaky Foundation Live, or Twitter, you can submit questions for Shanti at any time in the chat, and she'll be able to answer those live during the episode. The earlier you get those questions in, the more likely she will be able to answer them. So be sure to get those questions in early. My first question for you is, your research looks at a very critical period in human evolution from the lower Paleolithic to the early Holocene. What is the importance of this particular time period and the areas you were looking at?
Well, India is absolutely a fabulous region to explore aspects of human evolution. And we have this wonderful range of sites dating back to the lower Paleolithic, and a quite remarkable continuity and mosaic of cultures. So it's really cool to think about the fact that research into this Paleolithic of India dates back to 1863, when this amazing personality, Robert Bruce Foote, discovered the first Paleolithic artifacts at the very sites where my team and I are now working. So since then, there's been this very long and interesting history of research with fantastic work being done, laying down the foundations and building up these projects. But I would say that a lot of this work was published in journals in India and perhaps is not as well known in the West as it should be. So while everyone is familiar with what's happening in Africa, say for example, or Europe, there's much less awareness of what is happening in India, and less awareness of the fact that there are so many diverse views also among us on our prehistoric past. So one reason is perhaps the paucity of fossils, which are obviously very, very attractive. But we have fantastic lithic assemblages and sites, and our own team is exploring this diversity, multiple questions on hominid behavior, going deeper to extract information from, like Glyn Isaac said, squeezing blood from stones. I think he said that. So whether it's early phases of hominid behavior and paleo environments, or the transitions to from hunting gathering to agriculture, there's something for everyone. And we know a lot about these sites now. Despite the problem is there not been so many excavations or dated sites, so that's one drawback. So our research focuses on this crucial period of the Acheulean and Middle Paleolithic in the beginning, through these vast regional surveys and excavations, which I'll speak about. And these sites span a very crucial time period, dating back to almost 1.5 or more million years, where we see these evolutionary trajectories in the Acheulean, for example, and not only in our sites but in others as well. And the process of shifts to a completely different behavioral package of the Middle Paleolithic, beginning, as I will talk about later, somewhat older than 300,000. So this becomes very significant when we consider, for example, that the Indian Acheulean lasted for a very long time period,
Mm.
and we really don't know much about its origins or its evolution, like sites in Israel or Africa or elsewhere, or even of its ending and the beginnings of the Middle Paleolithic. What are the regional trajectories? Is it a similar or very different from what's happening elsewhere? So these are some of the questions we want to answer. And not only the big pictures linked to hominin dispersals, but also the tiny pictures. What's happening at this little site, and how are people behaving there through time? And it's on multiple scales. And right now, we are also looking at questions of transition to what were the drivers for the shift to microliths in the deep south of India, or the shift to agriculture in new projects. So, all in all, it's very, very exciting and yet very challenging. So, that's what we are up to.
So, what is unique about your research?
I think all researchers think their research is unique and we are all so different. But I think that in our center, we've had a very systematic, long term, sustained project in this tiny region, and this is quite rare in India. And despite numerous challenges, we have successfully excavated the sites Atharampakam, now Sendra and Palyam, with wonderful colleagues, and built up huge databases, attempt to publish as much as possible despite all the challenges we face. And as I said, in our goals span these very, very micro levels of understanding of the site, of tools, of cognition and behavior, and to put this in a global perspective. And this has led to a lot of new ways of thinking about the Acheulean and Middle in India, not only in terms of pushing back the chronology, but in implications of what does this mean globally, and in challenging or I wouldn't say challenging, but maybe rethinking traditional paradigms. So this brings in questions not only of the data, but also of ways in which we conceptualize, say, cultures or culture change or thinking like that. Can we use traditional models of, say, evolution within the Acheulean? Does the Indian sequence parallel that of Africa, West Asia? I think not. And it's these micro regional studies which I think are very unique and interesting, and make the story of Indian prehistory more complex. It's not unilinear, it's not simple arrows across the map in dispersals, but it's really complex. And that's the way we want to research to grow and develop. So it's, as I said, it's not only the dispersals or big questions, but it also, say, for example, going deeper into the stone tools. My colleague, Dr. Akhilesh, is an expert napper, and so this experimental archaeology programs which we are doing, it began only for research, but has now organically grown into teaching also and outreach. And the networks of colleagues we have developed who are working on paleo environments, and ever expanding teams of collaborating scientists from India and abroad. So they trusted us and they trusted our work, and I think that's absolutely great. Plus, of course, our wonderful students who keep coming and joining us and working with us. So, uh, right now, even with the COVID pandemic, we have suffered in terms of fieldwork, but we moved online with our Down Ancient Trails Forum, and reached out to cover more than 100 lectures from scholars all over the world. And so this combination, I think, makes our research quite interesting, and I hope unique.
Well, we'll hear more about it soon. But for you, when did you become interested in pursuing human evolution and archaeology as a career?
Well, it's always been archaeology. I always wanted to do that right from the time I was in school, and this is primarily because of the influence of my family, my grandfather, and my aunts, and even my great grandmother, who was always also interested in Indology and traveled to India in the 19th century. So the interest, and teachers in school. So these were all very, very inspiring. Though I can't say it was directly related to human evolution. It was more like Egypt or Indus Valley or something
Yeah.
like that. And I wrote this terrible article in a school magazine, I remember, on Egypt, which, and everyone said she's crazy about archaeology right from those days. So my father also bought a lot of books on evolution and science, and in fact, one of our neighbors had books by Leakey. So it was this overall, I think, a feeling of interest in the past. But the true interest in prehistory came from my studies in the Deccan College, Pune. And this was in the tradition of great archaeologists like Professor Sankalia and his students, Mishra, Professor Mishra, Padaya, Rajguru, Sheila Mishra, all Malti Nagar, all very great names in Indian prehistory. And they were so inspiring, and there was an atmosphere at that time of a lot of discussion and debate and thinking. So that got me hooked on to prehistory, human evolution, environmental archaeology, ethnoarchaeology. And since then, of course, once you're in the discipline, and I have great friends who are prehistorians all over the world, and it's their work which keeps me engaged and interested in the subject. So that's the way it is. And now, once you're hooked onto human evolution and prehistory, I don't think you can lose interest ever.
I hear you on that one. What was your first experience going out in the field like?
Okay, well, as long as I was a volunteer in someone else's fieldwork, in my master's and PhD, it was super fun. But when I stepped out for my own PhD, it was quite terrifying because you're thrown into the field alone and you're confronted by problems and a striking difference as to what is there in the textbooks and in PDFs and articles and what's there in the field. And I really didn't know what to do in the beginning. So it took a while, and again, I would say the local villagers helped me greatly because their understanding of the land and of sediments and stratigraphy was fabulous and is. And my family, and of course, mentors, my guide, PhD supervisor, Professor Padayan, Rajguru, V.N. Mishra, Sheila Mishra, they helped me greatly. And of course, my PhD was later reviewed by Professor Derek Rowe, and his comments also helped me in my perspectives on things. And then when we started our excavations at Athirampakam, it was a learning experience. Dr. Akhilesh was there and so many others. And of course, Dr. Maurice Taib, who was in India at the time and who used to tell me to stop and listen to the birds and not get so tense all the time. But now, with the heat and the dust and the very curious cobras and scorpions and very tough field conditions, are compensated by the wonderful local people who live there and who work with us, and my parents and husband and grandmother who visited the site and brought things for us to eat and moral uh, courage and strength. So and another apart from all these experiences, we always kept in mind Robert Bruce Foote, who worked here in the same region in 19th century, and in whose footsteps we felt we are following quite a bit, because his insights were quite remarkable, and it's a lot of inspiration from various people combined with growing experience of
Hmm.
learning about the landscape and immersing oneself in the subject and in the land and people, past and present. So that's how it's been, and it's been a great experience, I must say.
So you founded the Sharma Center for for Heritage Education India. Tell us more about the center and why you established it.
Okay, so the center was established with the aim of two aims actually. One of research in prehistory primarily, and the other of public outreach. So actually, we started not only with the excavations at Athirampakam, but also with the tiny children's museum at a school, Ellen Sharma School in near Chennai, where we wanted actually research to come out of its ivory towers, come out of the PDFs in big journals, and reach children. Because unlike elsewhere in the world, in India, there is far less awareness of prehistory amongst the
Hmm.
general public as there is of, say, historical sites or monuments or whatever. So, this is what we want to do. And it was a huge risk because we stepped outside the university traditional setup. And when Akhilesh joined us, and we began just with a table and a chair, and visitors had to sit on the floor. So from then on, we focused on this balance between research and outreach, and have grown and developed projects and in-house museum, outreach centers, and traveling workshops. So, and a lot of people trusted us and joined us. Our work either as collaborators or as students and volunteers, and so it's been a very very exciting adventure, very tough. I won't deny that there are a lot of expanding and other matters, but I think it's been great fun, and we've enjoyed the journey so for so many years, and we hope to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, you do. Your center does an incredible range of. I mean, not just the research and the education, but training and advocating for corporate social responsibility. Could you talk a little bit more about the kind of aspects of the center that are kind of beyond the research?
Yeah, so we always felt that it's great to do research, which probably only a handful of people will ultimately read, but it's necessary and it's very important, especially in subjects like prehistory, when you're thinking about sustainability and when you're thinking about future conservation. It's really important to directly address children because they are the future. So, in our center and outreach, we wanted to bring archaeology alive, not just prehistory, but various other aspects, and not through something which they cannot touch, but something very hands-on where they experiment and they handle either replica casts or fossils or artifacts, and they learn in alternate manners. So from this tiny beginning in a little room, we now expanded to have slightly bigger spaces and a lot of outdoor activities. And when children or teachers come to us, they get a little introduction to the subject and then an experience which they can immerse themselves in either an hour or 3 hours or a week or whatever it may be, whether it's on making stone tools which are taught to them or using them or touching replica skulls, feeling. And these are very structured
Mm,
series of activities through mock excavations or whatever it may be. And this, I feel, enables them to go back uh, without forgetting anything and getting a crucial view of what the subject is all about and questions. So when we come to adults like university graduate
yeah.
students, we run programs on lithic studies and especially on experimental napping to give them practical experiences of the problems in napping and the issues which come about, and of course linking that back to South Asian prehistory. So we've done a lot of these programs both in-house and across India and even in Sri Lanka, and we had a little stall even in South Korea for children in the Jeongguk Prehistory Museum. So with this combination of taking children to the sites and taking students on field work, so we try to build a package which sort of blends things together and reach out very importantly not only to a lot of underprivileged children,
Yeah.
to village children, and to children with special needs. So who come to our center and can actually touch the artifacts or you know do something with overcoming their some problems which they may have. And now with COVID, we've had to go online, and it's really tough, but it's okay. I think it's been good in a way.
How do you? I mean, they're all amazing programs. How do you balance? How do you? As a person, how do you balance it all?
It's tough call, and again, I'm very grateful to my family. A lot of sacrifices to do this, and I am very terrible at organizing myself. But my colleagues are very, they work with military precision. So that's a great, that's really wonderful. And the Leakey Foundation has helped us greatly in our research, but we have to appeal to a lot of other agencies for funding, and this is a constant struggle. But the important thing is freedom. We have freedom to devise programs we like, freedom to work with children or teachers, or structure our research the way we want to, reach out to ECRs or to faculty or whatever it is. And we don't really outsource any of our public outreach. We like to involve ourselves with people, and we we take in volunteers who have a talent for combining research with talking to children. That's really tough
Oh
because
yeah.
children ask very good questions, and sometimes you really don't have the answer, and then you can't make up an answer, but you have to tell
No.
them we don't know, and this is something you can do when you grow up. So I think that balance helps us in our research as well. So this is something which it's an organic evolution of the way we work. I
Yeah.
won't say it's been very well planned, but it's developed organically, and now we have a very good base to carry on forward.
Well, to learn more about the Sharma Center for Heritage Education India, their programs, and how you can help, we have shared a link to their website in the chat. Please be sure to check that out. Um, Before we turn the virtual floor over to Shanti, if you are watching live, be sure to submit questions in the chat at any time, and she'll be answering those after the episode. And if you're enjoying this episode of Lunch Break Science, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook or Twitter to receive reminders of upcoming episodes. Now let's turn the virtual floor over to Shanti and hear more about her research.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm again delighted to be here and to present a little overview of our activities that range both from research to public outreach to our commitment for this. So before I begin, I would like to just thank the Leakey Foundation right from the very first nails or pegs which went in at the field through our excavations at Atharampakam and at now Sendra and Palyam and the new sites. The Leakey Foundation has been a very important part of this journey, and so for that we are really grateful. Plus, I'm very happy, and before beginning, I would like to express my dedicate sort of this talk to Professor Dr. Maurice Taib, who just passed away recently, who was in India when we began our project and who was so inspiring for our work. And as you can see here, we have a wonderful team of colleagues, and although only I am speaking here, be, it is it is their work. That I must acknowledge, not only the scientists, the students, the volunteers, and the local people, without whom none of this would have been actually possible. So today I would like to zoom down into this tiny area of India, this small area of South India near the city of Chennai, and move between local Paleolithic landscapes and the global perspective, attempting to interpret hominin behavioral variability across this region and through the Pleistocene. So that's what we are going to do today. So, why is South Asia so important? Not only does it have this wonderful long sequence of Paleolithic cultures and cultural record, but a complex set of issues regarding transitions, adaptations against these very diverse paleo-environmental changes, which are hugely significant for debates on both hominin niches and dispersals across Asia. And despite the fact that we have very few fossils, these rich and diverse lithic assemblages and wonderful sites hold the key to decoding the past. And as I said before, this region has had a very long history of research into the Paleolithic, beginning with Robert Bruce Foote in 1863, discovering the first Paleolithic tools in the very regions where we are now working. So let's begin with zooming from at a regional level and then working our way down to the tools. So this is the area I'm going to speak about where our projects are located. And in this particular core zone, we have an area of around 8,000 square kilometers in northern Tamil Nadu that we are currently looking at. So our when we are looking at this entire region, we have had a range of multi-pronged survey and sampling strategies aimed at recovering controlled information on lithic assemblages from this region, site stratigraphy, contexts, geomorphology, and what and other variables. Not only through field transects, but also through satellite remote sensing, DGPS, and use of predictive locational modeling, test bits, and of course now using GPR to identify sediments of interest to us. So, following on old records and our own research, we have these wonderful sites, a huge database of sites ranging right from the Acheulean to the late Paleolithic that we are investigating here. And these sites are noted in diverse geomorphological and geological contexts. So all the little colors you see here are different formations, and we have a fairly good idea now of these different sites of different periods, occurring primarily within ferricretes or ferruginous sediments, but also within fluvio-lacustrine deposits, regoliths, etc., colluvium, and even rock shelters. And what's really interesting is that through time, the areas exploited by in different cultural phases varied. So you have a concentration of Acheulean sites here, whereas during the Middle Paleolithic you have them all over, and this is related to a number of different variables and factors. What's also equally interesting is the shifts in choices made in selection of different rocks to make tools. So although you have quartzites as the primary raw material selected for, you can see all these little colors represent different sources of raw materials, and which hominins made different decisions to exploit through time. And across the region, we also see this variability in the nature and the structure of assemblages, which give us wonderful clues as to not only the way in which the landscape is used functionally through time, but also complex issues related to palimpsests or for surface sites, for example. So all these are very interesting and challenging. And then when you zoom down to this little core zone and all these yellow dots you see here, prehistoric sites, to the areas that we are now focusing on, that comprise the sites of Atharampakam over here and Sendra and Palyam. So this is a sort of a landscape where we are focusing, where obviously one site doesn't give you the complete story, and therefore you need to look at different sites across the landscape to understand what was happening. And at these sites, these are really big sites, some exceeding 50,000 square meters, like Athrampakam, and Sendra and Palyam is even more, reflecting not only the exposed assemblages, only the areas which are now exposed is probably bigger than this, and they are deeply buried. And as you can see in our contour maps here, we've attempted to put trenches at different parts across the site to get a very good sample. And this is really important in India because lithics, other than lithics, we have very little to rely on for behavioral inferences. So sampling is really crucial. And of course, our strategies included very high resolution data recovery to the best of our ability, including 3D photogrammetry and mapping every single thing we find, not only the artifacts, but the natural class or features, and sieving everything to recover microdebitage, among various other strategies. So one of the most important sites we have been working on is that of Atharampakam, and you see it here, a very contoured landscape, and this is the satellite image of the same. And literally, you walk across tools when you walk across this site. And I believe at least 50 years ago or more, my teachers tell me it was much richer. So this is the site where we are now excavating. And what this site has a wonderful sequence of stratified occupation, right from the Acheulean, it's more than I think about 7 meters here, to the Middle Paleolithic on top, and transitions within. So in this is really important because it shows that the site was repeatedly occupied by different groups of hominins through time until it was abandoned somewhere right at the top for perhaps climatic conditions. And with a stratigraphic and cultural break somewhere here, and we'll talk about that more a little later. So that's what the site is like, and you can see our excavations and some of the lithics we recovered. So in this Acheulean occupation, the earliest occupation was potentially by Homo erectus, although we don't have the fossils. And what is really important is that in these very fine-grained sediments, you have a number of artifacts, and the context is of high integrity. We know that as we get conjoinable tools, and it's really beautifully preserved. So we know that hominins repeatedly, Acheulean tool-making hominins, visited this site, and their lithics are reflected primarily in this complex of large cutting tools, with the bifaces being, of course, very, very important. So when we dated the site using paleomagnetic and cosmogenic burial methods, the dates ranged from about 1 million to 1.7, averaging around 1.5, and this was quite stunning. It was not really very it was stunning in many ways. Firstly, it clearly established that the Indian Acheulean was very old, so not as young as it was considered to be, but it pushed back the date contemporary to some of the sites in Africa and Israel, and this has had a huge implication when thinking about the nature and timing of hominin dispersals into India. There were hints of other sites in India that were equally old, and we were very encouraged to see that, and also, and I'm sure more data is now going to come out from India with very equally old sites. So that was also very exciting. And in these Acheulean assemblages, not only is there some variability spatially across the site, but also through time in their distribution, composition, and metrical measurements and dimensions of artifacts. But despite that, there is this remarkable stasis right from throughout the entire sequence, and as I said before, dominated by these large cutting tools and also by small flake tools and a lot of waste products, which are also important parts of the assemblage. So, to go deeper into the assemblage, we started this experimental mapping program so that my colleague, as you see here, Akhilesh, he could actually devise some structured methods to address specific questions that we were facing when studying the assemblage. So it's not just the manufacture of good looking hand axes, but to replicate everything, even the errors, the breakage patterns, the hammers used possibly, so many aspects of the assemblage, which we are now sort of decoding using experimental archaeology and combined with looking at the lithics at the site, of course. So what do we find? We find wonderful evidence of large flake detachment. Despite the fact this happened off-site, we get evidence of the Combeva, for example, being brought to the site and used further. Diacritical studies and decoding exactly ways in which the bifaces were made and issues in biface shape and symmetry. The wonderful component of debitage of the waste products arising from biface reduction and the small flake tools, issues in skill through time, and of course looking at these lithics in terms of understanding cognition. So when we look at the complete reduction sequence, it's really interesting. You have aspects which happened off-site, somewhere else in the landscape, and bringing of these large tools to the site, finishing the bifaces on site, for which we get a lot of these evidence of later stages of biface reduction, reusing these sometimes to make small flake tools, and then discard and potential curation of some of the artifacts which we don't find at all away from the site. And then what happened? So after stratigraphic break in the site, our recent research shows that this thick sequence overlying the Acheulean marks very interesting processes of transition. So at around 385 plus minus 64, don't forget the plus minus, so it can be closer to 300 maybe, or even somewhat older. We have continuity of some of the bifaces, some of the hand axes, which become small, and new, which they sort of disappear. You have the obsolescence of these large flake technologies, lots of small flake tools, and appearance of new technologies such as the Levallois and laminar elements as well. And then gradually, as one comes to around 172,000, you have the bifaces completely disappearing, and you have a very fine grained raw material and these sort of modified pointed tools, and a whole lot of other small flake tool components appearing. And this, then the site was abandoned. And this shift from these large flake, the large flake Acheulean, to the small tool component is a very remarkable transformation into a new behavioral and technological package, which has again implications as to whether it's a result of a combination of local innovations with extrinsic influences. And this is really a complex problem which we are trying to understand at this and others across the region. So We've also tried to build up some aspects of past environments with my wonderful colleagues, looking at variability in arid, humid phases and vegetation through the study of phytoliths, which give us some idea as to what was the microenvironmental conditions at this site over the Pleistocene. And then, as I said, Athirampakkam cannot be studied alone. And our recent work at the site of Sendra and Palyam, along with colleagues from CNEA, University of Lyon, France, Sri Lanka, and India, many colleagues from India, we are now excavating the site. And I hope I can talk more about this at some point later, in which again you have a wonderful sequence of lower Paleolithic in these stratified deposits. And across a very very huge area, and a number of we are using a number of methods to collect samples for paleobotany, micromorphology, sedimentology, and of course geochronology across the site. So it's extremely rich with a very very high density of artifacts, as you can see in some of the trenches here, and a fascinating record of a fascinating record of the Acheulean in the upper levels, and through with a lot of evidence on spatial patterning both between layers and across the site. And also a very interesting and high rate of conjoining artifacts which are found. So these testify to the high integrity of this wonderful site. So the studies are still going on. Our fieldwork was not completed fully because of the COVID pandemic, and we are still working on the data. And I hope I can speak more on this a little later and perhaps in another talk. But is it enough? So while it's great doing research, as I said in the beginning, we always believe that public outreach is crucial. And this is exactly what we are doing here. So through our little in-house museum and outreach workshops, we have tried to convey information about the past to a diverse range of students, whether it's children or from rural areas or urban areas or special children or a whole net range of socioeconomic backgrounds. And our motto has been to create alternate modules of teaching to connect scientists and children and to communicate research and ideas to as many people as possible. So whether it's actually teaching mapping like Akhilesh is doing here, or using tools to do to cut things or to scrape or do whatever they can, obviously with safety protocols in mind, or handling these fossil casts, or touching tools, touching different raw materials and learning about them, asking questions, which is really, really the most important point, or mock trenches, where they learn that archaeologists just don't dig up things, but the meticulous nature of recovery and interpretation and post excavation analysis. Or visiting us while we are digging and learning about how archaeologists dig at the site. So this is Sendra and Palyam. And these are a number of workshops which we had on site with sort of art competitions and all sorts of other activities for children and teachers. And of course, traveling modules as far as we can do across India and elsewhere, and outreach for students, teaching them napping in India, in Sri Lanka, or taking them to the field. And exhibitions like this one, with where our hand axe was very proudly displayed next to one from Ulduai in an exhibition held some years back. So it is now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have moved online with our Town Ancient Trails Forum. And this has reached out, I think, to a lot of people, and it has enabled us also to learn so much from scholars from all over the world. So that's been really great. And this is the team who worked on this project with us and organized all these lectures. So I'm really grateful to them as well. So ultimately, our work is all about people, people in the past, people today, from our colleagues to the local villagers to the students and interns, and of course, the future, reaching out to children, to teachers, and who are ultimately the custodians for this heritage. So that's it for today, and I thank you for listening to me. I thank all my colleagues through the years and this ever growing network of scientists who are willing to trust us and to collaborate with us. So I'm very grateful to everyone here in this list. I know you can't read it now, but it's there on our website as well. And of course, to the Leakey Foundation and to all the other organizations who have funded us and who have given us permits to work. So, thank you. So, for listening to me, I think I will stop sharing. Yes, that's it. Thank you. I hope I'm in time.
Sorry, I muted myself. That was an amazing talk. Thank you so much. I feel like I really want to learn more. So now we will be taking some questions from the audience. If you are watching and have a question, please submit those questions now. And now is the time. We already have a few questions, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay. Our first question comes from H. Could you tell us a little bit about how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your research projects?
Well, yes, it has affected greatly. We could not go to the field primarily because we had the safety of our team to be predominant. So until everyone was vaccinated, we did not take the risk. So right now, everyone has got vaccinated, and we'll be going next year. So yes, it has affected. It set us back a lot, but that's the negative part. But the positive part is that as we were locked down without any destruction, we had a lot of time to work on the lytics, to work on our material, and to read a lot without getting distracted by other things. And I think that's really been great. And it's also been great in the sense that we were able to organize these lectures and connect online with so many people. So traditionally, we would never have been able to attend conferences abroad or hear what people are discussing. But with COVID, the positive factor is that because of going online and a lot of open access lectures, it's really helped us in that sense. So I would say both plus and minus.
Yeah, we have the link for the Down Ancient Trails to share in the chat. Let's get that in there. And we also have another lecture of yours because I feel like even after all of the questions answered, that I think our viewers will be still wanting more. So we'll get those in there, and we'll also be sending those out in our follow-up email. Let's take our next question from the audience. Cheryl asks, does the government take an interest in Indian prehistory, and do they provide funding to conduct research?
Well, yes, I think so. The government has given us permits right from the beginning onwards. So to do research in India, you need permits from the Archaeological Survey of India and from the local state government. And I think that till now we have never been denied a permit. And so that's really fantastic. Funding, of course, there is not much funding in a country like India. So yes, to some extent, and it's been difficult. But permits are very, very important to work, and I'm very happy that we've got a lot of support in that respect. And the Tamil Nadu government in particular has been extremely helpful because not only in supporting us, in encouraging us, and we have been also training many of their students and staff, and there's wonderful interchange of ideas. So that's been great.
Our next question comes from Guy. He asks, do you think the biphasic distribution of tools at the site was more likely due to maturating technology at the site or a potential replacement of the population or something else?
Well, this is a great question, and I think that's the answer we are searching for. So you have elements, older elements continuing. Now this comes to the question of how we visualize cultures. If you we were very uh, we believe that you cannot define a culture based on the presence or absence of a single type tool. For example, if you have a hand axe being present or absent, or the levallois or blade technology, we all know now that these are time transgressive. So if you try to say that this is Acheulean or middle just because of the presence or absence of a tool, then you're going very wrong. So we prefer to look at the entire assemblage. What is happening in the entire assemblage in a more holistic view? What is happening with the technology changing at all? So as we don't have fossils, it's very, very difficult to say who made the tools. And I would be it's not possible for me to pin down a species. You know that it's correlating species with particular cultures is becoming more and more difficult nowadays, and so I won't go into the species at all. But yes, I think there are local elements which continue, and there are external influences which suddenly appear at the site. So this is a question which we need more sites to excavate, and that's exactly why we are excavating Sendra and Palyam and others. You won't get the question answer from one site or even one region. So we have many prehistorians in India working across the country, and together I think their research and ours put together can help to solve your question, the answers to your question.
Our next question comes from Brandon. He asks, are there any challenges you face when teaching human evolution in India?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, no, people are extremely receptive. And in fact, in the villages when we go to do outreach during our excavations, we have a little, we take these fossil replicas, casts along with us, and we have a little exhibition at the site with posters in English and Tamil. That's the local language. And the people are really receptive. And in fact, when you go to some of these sites, we allow our local villagers who work with us to give the lecture on human evolution to other villagers. So they have a wonderful grasp of the subject, and they are interested, and children are particularly receptive, children and teachers. So it's been wonderful. And actually, I don't have many answers to the questions they ask. So it's great, and I haven't faced any challenges at all in that respect.
Well, that's wonderful, and just the outreach work you do. I think we've had several comments come in, but it's just absolutely amazing. Our next question comes from Janice. Can you say a little more about how your research has changed our understanding of early hominid migration?
Hi, Janice. Thank you for your question. Well, yes, I think that the dates from Atharampakam, and the credit goes to the entire team, of course, not to me, uh, did indeed push the antiquity of the Indian Acheulean back. Now, it's not that we were the first to say that the Indian Acheulean was really old and contemporary. People had said this before us, but I think that this combination of the excavations and our dating methods and the way we managed to publish all this was fairly convincing. And it really changed the idea of the Indian Acheulean being very late. So the way we look now at evolutionary trajectories within the Acheulean has completely changed because of this. And secondly, regarding the work we are doing now on the transitions to the early middle Paleolithic. Now there are of course a lot of debates, and that's the way science should progress. Not everyone needs to agree with us, but we believe in what we wrote. So in that case, we feel that the processes occurring in India at this particular time period are not unusual. They're happening in Africa, they're happening in elsewhere in Eurasia, and this is also what we see in India. And it is complex. It completely challenges the idea of a single arrow of people having a timetable to come to India and move on from there. It challenges that, and it encourages us to think of concepts and to think of alternative ideas maybe. So I think that's our contribution, and many agree, some don't. It doesn't matter. It's a way forward in science as you go on evolving your thoughts and perhaps rethinking what you said earlier. So that's the way it goes.
I have a question because you have two new sites you're working on. Beyond that, are you looking for other sites as well, or like how do you go about locating new sites and
Yes, so for the preliminary surveys which we did, that has resulted in a comprehensive database. So not all sites are worth excavating, and not all sites will give you the type of data you're looking for. They may be in a reworked context, or they may be palimpsests, or they may have just disappeared because of other agriculture, other processes. So from among the sites which we know are there, we selected some, and we are trying to do as much as we can. And our students of course are continuing this, so we hope that they will take up this work now in other sites in the region. So that's the way we do it, and each excavation is problem oriented. So it's not that we are excavating a site just because it's there, but Athirampakam brought out certain questions, and to solve those questions we went to Sendra and Palyam and now to other sites. So that's how it we plan it.
and then when are your field seasons and what kind of impacts when you're able to have them?
Yeah, so the monsoon is a big problem here. because we cannot excavate then, and that's going on right now. So the field season for us is ideal from January to March, April. So, and generally we end up in April where it's really really hot and everyone is sort of collapsing. But that's a great time to excavate because the water levels are low and you can get to see the landscape better. So you have that's the way it is.
So, my last question for you is, do you have any advice for those who are watching who are interested in pursuing studying prehistory and archaeology as a career?
Yes, if you're listening from students are listening in from India, certainly it's a wonderful subject. And it's great fun. It's going to be very tough, especially if you want a job or if you want to have a comfortable life. You won't get that. But the knowledge which you acquire about our past and the significance of both understanding issues related to human evolution and to past environments, there's no better subject you can think of except for priestry. So I would advise you to get out there in the field and to do what you can in whichever part of India and have fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Shanti. This was just, and I feel like we just scratched the surface, but I wish we could have you for another hour, but that's why we shared the links to Down Ancient Trails and some of your other lectures. So, but just thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We hope that you will all join us on November 4th for our next episode of Lunch Break Science. We'll be meeting Leakey Foundation grantee Andrew Bernard and learning about the effects of climate change on primates, including orangutans. It will be a great episode, so we hope to see you all there. Okay, well, thank you for taking a break from your day and feeding your brain with the Leakey Foundation. Until next time, stay hungry for knowledge.
Thank you. Bye.
Lunch Break Science is brought to you by the Leakey Foundation and is made possible by the generous support of the Ann and Gordon Getty Foundation and Camilla and George Smith. Visit us at leakeyfoundation.org to learn more about the Leakey Foundation, today's guest scientist, and how you can help support human evolution research and educational programs like Lunch Break Science. Right now, all donations will be matched by generous donors, meaning your impact will be doubled. Miss an episode of Lunch Break Science? Catch up on past episodes and browse our library of Leakey Foundation lectures on our YouTube channel. Still hungry for science and can't wait till our next episode? Check out the Leakey Foundation's award-winning podcast, Origin Stories, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to the Leakey Foundation's YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or sign up for our newsletter to be the first to hear about exciting upcoming episodes and programs, as well as groundbreaking discoveries in human evolution research.